I just thought I'd weigh in because everybody else has. I agree with Commissioner Justice that anybody can run for a constitutional office. And fortunately, we have some very qualified people in there and have been in there a long time. But you could also have people get on the ballot who, by some fluke, get elected because they had a maniac running against them or whatever. You know, we've seen that happen in city commissions, even here. And I agree that term limits has turned over the, or elections have turned over the composition of this commission over the last 8 years, well, including my own seat. And even last year, we came very close. Our elections are not landslides. And I think that says a lot. You know, it says people are engaged, people are paying attention to what's going on. And, I don't consider myself to have an advantage because I'm an incumbent. You know, I have a record. So if people like my record, great, I'll get reelected. If they don't, I am out of here because that's how it works. I think what happened in the legislature when term limits came in is it put staff much more in charge. It put lobbyists much more in charge. It's very difficult to learn everything you need to know in a couple of years. Even in 8 years, there are things, when Commissioner Seal starts bringing out things from 20 years ago, they're often very valuable to know. And I'm not saying every one of us should be here for 20 years, but it's great having some institutional knowledge. And I think we're all going to miss her a lot when she leaves. And I think we already miss Commissioner Welch because he had that institutional knowledge as well. But, I mean, once you get where you have a majority of those people, as we have in the, well, I don't even know if I can say that anymore with the constitutionals, but many of them have been there a long time. So I don't see any compelling reason why, and I would say in 2021 or 22 that I don't hear a majority of people saying they want term limits either. I have never had anybody say to me, it'll probably happen this afternoon, but I've never had anybody say we ought to have term limits. So I don't know. I guess you're talking to different people than me.
Yeah, I'm asking. So, Commissioner Long.
So, I'm curious, in all the time I've been on the county commission, which certainly, doesn't measure up to some of my colleagues, present and former, the only individual I've ever heard talk about term limits is Mr. Wheeler from North County. So, Mr. Chair, when you talk about the tons of people, or whatever that adjective was that you used, it was a lot of people are demanding term limits. Where are they? Because I've never heard from them. Commissioner Gerard just said she had never heard from them. I don't know about you, Commissioner Peters or Commissioner Justice, but I mean, it's kind of like what someone said to me the other day that I thought was so profound. It's like trying to sew a coat on a button. If it's not broken, why are we trying to fix it?
Yeah, well, again, I think 70% of our residents back in 1995 did speak. So, I mean, if you're looking for people to speak on it, they spoke then. And I think because of the discussion that we're having here today, what I said to you in the beginning was I think we owe it to our residents to give them an opportunity to choose whether they want term limits or not. Give them another opportunity. It's been 25 years since they had that vote. I don't know what we're afraid of. Let them have the opportunity to vote on it. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that I'm all-knowing. I'm not saying I've done a statistical sampling. I said we had a vote back in 95 that did clearly say that the majority of people in Pinellas County wanted term limits. People that I've talked to, I have asked that question, and many of them, somewhat facetiously, say, well, that's not going to happen, but here's how I feel about it. So it's not that they've come pouring into the office. I mean, Kim doesn't get calls every day saying, we need term limits. But I think some of it is because they don't think it's really possible unless they do another petition drive. And I would say that if a petition drive does get started, that you'll probably be talking about 8 years, and not the three terms and you're out. So for me, this was a way to say, hey, we hear you. There's a lot of people who don't like them, and this kind of settles in at a nice 3-year term. I think 10 years plus 2 gives plenty of us opportunities to listen and learn in that first term, bring some things forward in that second term that mean a lot to us, and then finally we get a chance to push through and get them implemented. And it does take time, and it does take, to use the word from the first presentation, resilience to get things through here. It's not like whether the Democrats control the House and the Senate and the governor's office in Tallahassee or vice versa. Here, it's working with each other to try to get something done. It takes 4 votes. It can't just happen. So to me, it was really about that. It's pretty simple. Instead of putting everybody through having to do a petition drive and the complexities that go with it, they've done it once. Let's do it again on their behalf. Commissioner Peters?
So I just have a couple of comments. First of all, I hear it all the time, and matter of fact, one of the opponents that ran last time ran on term limits. So not by very much. And so my point is, I believe because of COVID, we have had so many more people engaged in our county meetings, more than I think we've ever had engaged in local government ever. And I think that as a result of that, I think more people are paying attention and more people are active about it. And so I think that when the last language went through and there was court cases, I think people got frustrated and just said, I give up. I have no hope. And many of their opinions is that we're doing something illegal. I'm not saying that that's true. I'm just saying that's their opinion. But I do believe, based on just the bubble that has changed from people being more engaged with local government, that there will be another attempt from the citizens, because I certainly hear it a lot. You may not hear it. I hear it a lot. So I would like us to have the ability to draft that language and have that done versus having it dictated to us through a ballot initiative. I do believe that if it made it to a ballot initiative and it was legally, I think just like in the 90s, you're going to have a large turnout that's going to say yes. Whether they're doing it because they feel Washington needs it and not understand whatever it is, I do believe that there would be support if there was a ballot initiative, and I would rather have the ability for us to claim that language, draft that language, than have it imposed upon us. But yes, there is a lot of talk about it, and it really has bubbled up more in the last 2 years than I've heard in a long time. So that's just my opinion and my thoughts on it.
Yes. Commissioner Long, go ahead.
Commissioner Peters, do you not think that this not this November, but coming right up, the voters will have an opportunity clearly to express their opinion?
If they have a chance to vote on language, of course they'll express their opinion.
I'm talking about the commissioners that are going to be on the ballot. Are they not going to have a chance then? We have 600,000 plus registered voters in this county. They'll have an opportunity to clearly express their opinion in 2022 November.
I clearly understand where you're coming from. I clearly understand that you believe term limits are based on voters voting for people. My comment and my stand on, sure, you're right about that, except there is a distinct advantage, whether you agree with me or not. If you look at the data, I believe there's a distinct advantage to an incumbent versus a non-incumbent. And so there's an imbalance in my opinion. So I get where you're coming from, I really do. And maybe it's a philosophical thing that we disagree on, and it's okay to disagree. It's just something that I think new people coming on is a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. And when I forget what the word you used, maybe somebody who might not be considered I'm not sure how to use the word because I didn't like the word that was used. You know, a good player. I don't know what word to use because I just didn't like the word you used, somebody used. But you know, when somebody who isn't a good steward to the people get elected, they seldom get elected again. Because the people know that. So when there is a fluke and somebody who got elected for maybe the wrong reasons, but they truly do not turn out to be good stewards of the people, they don't get reelected again. So it isn't about, and you know, if we had somebody who ran for sheriff who wasn't clearly qualified, I don't think that they would make it again. I think constitutional, as I stand firm on that position, and if the courts weighed in it that same way, I happen to agree with them. But no, I think we have a different philosophy, and maybe we disagree, and that's okay. Yeah.
I can just make one more
Yeah, go
point.
ahead.
I agree with everything you just said, Commissioner Peters, except for one thing. When Commissioner Justice and I were first elected, we were running against incumbents. And they had the advantage, and Commissioner Justice and I still won. So there are those circumstances where candidates and incumbents are totally different, and the voters speak. So I just wanted to put that on the record because it just proves that that is not always the case. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah,
good.
and I just, you know, give one last couple of comments, and I think I've said them a little bit, but first and foremost, it's about giving residents a choice. That's really, and has nothing to do with you and me and our differences of opinion. It's about giving residents a choice. I think it is naive to say that the incumbents don't have a little bit of an advantage. As Commissioner Gerard says, we do have a track record that is open for attack, agreement, whatever. But by and large, unless there is a compelling issue, and there are that they have been there, like fluoride was one. The pandemic is another one that we've been through. Sometimes there's an issue that elevates above and beyond everything else that's to be considered. But by and large, all things being equal, it's naive to think that there isn't an advantage for incumbents. The other thing that I think is interesting, we have 24 cities with commissioners that are becoming either they're one term, two terms, they're becoming seasoned in their own rights, and they really have, they want to further their efforts at being public servants, and it's difficult to get into that lane. It's not impossible, it's just difficult when you have commissioners that have those seats for unlimited number of terms. And so we're preventing other commissioners that are trying, but we also are preventing other residents that might want to step into the role. So I just think there's all kinds of good reasons to do it. I can't think of any good reason not to do it. And you can say anything you want about, well, there are term limits. Well, then let folks vote on it. You're letting folks vote on us, let folks vote on term limits. It's just that simple. And I'm going to be bringing it forward for another workshop discussion before my term is up so that we can have all 7 commissioners weigh in and hopefully at least give some direction to staff to bring it to a commission meeting for discussion, not necessarily a vote, but a discussion so that we can start crafting language, presuming we have the support along the way. I would just ask each of you to just reflect a little bit way beyond when we're here, but rather the future of our county and folks that are interested in serving residents, other commissioners from cities, anybody that wants to step forward. You know in your hearts it is difficult to take this on, this effort to run for office with 250,000 residents or 1 million, depending on your seat. It's a Herculean effort for sure. So it affects family and friends and monies and all that good stuff. And so I would just say, please be open-minded as we have another discussion and a workshop about where we can compromise between the 8 years is enough and that. Yes, Commissioner Jewell.
If I can just mention one more thing, because I've heard it discussed here during your discussion here. The term limits that appear in the Florida Constitution that do relate to the congressional offices, they actually still appear in the Florida Constitution. They're not valid, but if I'm reading the historical note here right, they were adopted in 1992 by initiative petition. They were invalidated by the Florida Supreme Court in 1999 with a finding that they violated the qualifications clause of the U.S. Constitution. So that, you're correct, Commissioner Justice, it was going on kind of around at the same time.